When I had my wisdom teeth removed last year, the anesthesia apparently turned me into a full-blown crime boss. As I started waking up, I became absolutely convinced I was a high-ranking member of an international drug cartel. I locked eyes with the oral surgeon, grabbed his scrubs with my still bloody hand, leaned in close, and whispered in a gravelly voice, "The package is hidden inside the whale." Then I tried to wink dramatically, but instead both eyes just shut at the same time and I immediately passed back out. According to my mom, the surgeon laughed so hard he had to step out of the room to compose himself. After knee surgery, I woke up and saw my wife sitting beside the bed. I stared at her for a long, uncomfortable 5 minutes without saying a word. Finally, she asked if something was wrong. I gasped in horror and said, "Does my girlfriend know you're here? Because she's going to murder both of us." For the record, I have never had a girlfriend while married, or ever cheated at all. It took 3 full days to convince my wife that anesthesia temporarily erased my brain and not my morals. I work as a recovery room nurse, and one of my favorite moments involved a sweet elderly grandmother waking up from hip surgery. She waved me over with a deadly serious look, so I leaned in, expecting her to ask for water or pain medication. Instead, she whispered urgently, "Do not trust the penguins. They wear tuxedos because they are in the mafia." Then she stared into an empty corner of the room and shouted, "I see you, Rico." I nodded politely and backed away from the penguin crime family. After getting my tonsils removed, I woke up sobbing uncontrollably. The nurse rushed in, thinking I was in agony. Between heaving cries, I managed to say, "I just remembered, dinosaurs are dead." She tried to comfort me, but I snapped, "You don't understand." Littlefoot never got to see his mom again. I spent the next hour mourning the entire cast of The Land Before Time while angrily eating lime jello and questioning existence. When my brother woke up after having his appendix removed, he became convinced he had been kidnapped by extraterrestrials. He stared at the IV in his arm, noticed the beeping machines, and started screaming, "They're probing me." I knew this would happen. When the doctor walked in, my brother pointed at him and yelled, "Take me to your leader, you white-coated lizard man." The doctor didn't even flinch, just sighed and checked the chart like this was a Tuesday. After ankle surgery, I woke up absolutely certain I was inside a Harry Potter movie. I grabbed my IV pole and tried to mount it like a broomstick so I could fly away. When the nurse stopped me, I glared at her with pure magical arrogance and shouted, "10 points from Gryffindor for your insolence." I then tried to heal my foot by repeatedly screaming, "Reparo." Spoiler: it did not work. Coming out of anesthesia after a colonoscopy, I apparently decided the doctor was the most attractive human being alive. I grabbed his hand, pressed it against my cheek, and told him, "You have the softest hands I've ever felt. Do you moisturize with clouds?" Then I asked if he wanted to run away to Mexico and open a taco stand together called Holy Guacamole. The doctor stayed professional, the nurses absolutely did not. When my sister had her wisdom teeth removed, her tongue went completely numb. Unfortunately, her brain decided that meant it was no longer her tongue. She kept trying to spit it into the little bowl, crying, "Get this slug out of my mouth." Someone put a slug in me. When she tried to grab it with her fingers and realized it was attached to her throat, she became genuinely horrified and screamed louder. After shoulder surgery, I woke up in a blind panic, convinced I was late for something extremely important. I started throwing the blankets off and yelling, "The King of Sweden is waiting for my casserole. He loves cheesy potatoes." My husband tried to calm me down, but I accused him of sabotage. "You want the king to starve? You're an anarchist." Then I admitted I didn't even know how to make cheesy potatoes and burst into tears. After surgery to fix my broken nose, I became convinced the hospital was actually a spaceship traveling to Mars. I asked the nurse how long until we arrived. She played along and said, "About 2 hours." I grabbed her arm and whispered urgently, "Do not let them open the airlock." I saw something on the wing. I refused to sleep because I had to stay awake and guard everyone from space gremlins. When I came out of anesthesia, I was absolutely convinced I was a musical genius. My mom recorded everything. I started beatboxing terribly and freestyling about the hospital ceiling tiles like I was headlining a concert. Yo, the ceiling so white, feeling okay tonight, nurse in the scrubs, show me some love. I dramatically dropped an imaginary microphone and asked when my record deal would be offered. I am a 30-year-old accountant. I have never shown musical talent in my life. I woke up and saw my dad standing next to my bed. I squinted at him for a long time and asked very seriously, "Are you Batman?" He laughed and said yes. I immediately burst into tears. Full panic. He asked why I was crying, and I sobbed, "That means I'm an orphan. Mom died in an alley." He had to FaceTime my mom at work to prove she was alive. Even then, I demanded she show today's newspaper so I could confirm the date wasn't fake. After surgery on my hand, it was completely wrapped in bandages. I couldn't see my fingers and became convinced they were gone forever. I screamed, "I'm a Lego. I'm a Lego person now." I held my bandaged hand up like a plastic Lego claw and tried to pick up a cup of water using claw motions. When I spilled it everywhere, I blamed the hospital for not providing Lego-compatible cups. My girlfriend woke up from a minor procedure absolutely furious, not about pain, but about the wall color. She kept hitting the call button until the nurse came, then declared, "This beige is offensive. It makes me feel like a depressed potato." She demanded to speak to the manager of colors and offered to repaint the room herself if they'd give her glitter and a brush. I woke up convinced I was a secret agent whose cover had been blown. When they handed me the discharge paperwork, I started shoving it into my mouth, trying to eat it. "The enemy can't know my dietary restrictions," I mumbled while chewing. The nurse had to pry the pamphlet out of my mouth before I swallowed the instructions for post-op care. After wisdom teeth removal, I became convinced I had been robbed. I patted my gown, panicking. My keys, my wallet, my dignity. Then I pointed at the nurse and accused her of stealing my vibe. "You can keep the wallet, but I need my vibe back. I have plans this weekend." I woke up staring at my hands like they belonged to someone else. I held them up, turning them over slowly, whispering in horror, "These are huge. These are giant hands. Why did they switch my hands?" For the next 20 minutes, I tried to shake them off so my real hands would grow back. I came out of anesthesia convinced I was fluent in French, despite not speaking a single real word of it. I babbled nonsense with a ridiculous accent, saying things like, "The cheese is on the pool table." When the nurse asked how I felt, I replied smugly, "Oui oui baguette fell tower." I was extremely proud of myself. My boyfriend woke up incredibly thirsty. The nurse gave him a small plastic cup of water. He took one sip, stared at it in awe, and announced, "This is the finest vintage I've ever tasted." Notes of wet. He started swirling the water like wine and asked for the wine list so he could order a bottle for the table. I became convinced the blood pressure cuff on my arm was a pet snake. I stroked it gently and talked to it in a baby voice. "Who's a good squeeze noodle?" "You are." When it inflated, I gasped and told the nurse, "He's hugging me. He loves me. We're getting married in the spring." I woke up absolutely furious and demanded to see my lawyer immediately. I am 16 years old. I do not have a lawyer. When my mom asked why I needed one, I explained very seriously that I was preparing to sue gravity. "It's been holding me down my whole life," I said. "I'm ready to fly." I tried to demonstrate by jumping out of the bed, but the side rails stopped me. I then added the bed rails to the lawsuit for false imprisonment. I became convinced the heart monitor beeping was actually a techno beat. I started bobbing my head, waving one finger in the air, yelling, "DJ, drop the bass." Every time the beeping sped up, I cheered like the song was building. When the nurse came in to check on me, I told her she was killing the vibe and needed to get on my level. After wisdom teeth surgery, I looked in the mirror and immediately started crying. Not because of pain, because I wasn't Ryan Reynolds. I touched my face and wailed, "Where is the jawline? Where is the charisma?" My mom tried to comfort me, but I yelled, "You're only saying that because you're not Blake Lively." I woke up convinced I had just given birth. I am a man. I kept asking the nurses where my baby was and whether it was a boy or a girl. When they said I'd had appendix surgery, I leaned in suspiciously and whispered, "You sold him to the circus, didn't you?" I spent the next hour mourning my imaginary son, Bartholomew, who I believed was now performing under a big top. I came out of anesthesia fully convinced I was inside a video game. I kept reaching into the air, trying to open an invisible menu. "I need a health potion," I told the nurse. "My HP is low." When she brought me apple juice, I chugged it and shouted, "Plus 50 stamina." Then I announced it was time to raid the dungeon, which was apparently the hospital bathroom. My husband woke up and became hypnotized by the spinning ceiling fan. After watching it silently for 10 minutes, he whispered, "It's a propeller. We're underwater." He started holding his breath. I had to shake him and remind him to breathe. He gasped and said, "That was close. I saved us from running out of oxygen." I woke up completely in love with the IV stand. I was stroking the metal pole, telling it how tall and shiny it looked. "You're stunning in silver," I whispered. When the nurse moved it, I got jealous and snapped, "Back off, Jessica. We're going to be king and queen of the recovery room." I became convinced my tongue was actually a slice of ham. I kept trying to chew on it, but the pain confused me. I called the nurse over and complained, "This ham is too fresh. It's fighting back." I asked for mustard to make it taste better. The nurse handed me an ice pack instead. I woke up and saw two nurses talking at the foot of my bed. In my mind, they were my parents, but shrunken. I yelled, "Mom? Dad? Why are you so small? Did you go through the washing machine again?" I cried because I was afraid I'd step on them and made them promise to stay away from my feet until they grew back to normal size. I became convinced I was a billionaire. I kept tipping staff with imaginary money, pulling fake bills out of thin air. "Here's 1,000 for not killing me." Then I tried to buy the hospital. I told the surgeon, "I'll take the whole thing. Put it on my black card. Turn one floor into a bowling alley." I woke up from surgery in a full-blown panic, convinced that my nose had been stolen. I kept touching my face. I could feel a nose there. Logically, everything checked out. Emotionally, absolutely not. I shouted that it was a fake, some kind of plastic decoy nose meant to distract me while the real one was taken. I started accusing random hospital staff of being part of an underground nose theft operation. At one point, I pointed at a janitor and yelled, "You look like someone who sells noses on the black market. Give it back." Security gently backed him out of the room. After foot surgery, I woke up believing my toes were tiny people who lived at the end of my leg. I named all of them. There was Bob, Larry, Sue, Pinky, and Big Tony, the big toe, who I immediately decided had an attitude problem. I tried to get Tony to wave back at me. When he didn't move, I told my mom, "He's being a snob today. We aren't speaking." I refused to acknowledge Big Tony for the next half hour. I woke up and decided, very firmly, that I was a cat. I refused to speak. If the nurse asked me a question, I responded with a soft meow. If my mom tried to talk to me, I hissed at her. I attempted to groom myself by licking the back of my hand. When they brought me water in a cup, I got angry that it wasn't placed on the floor in a bowl and knocked it off the tray table with my hand. I was deeply offended that no one respected my new species.